Hi SS1, you're welcome to our second class in basic ecological concepts. The first time we talked about ecology and we also looked at some terms in ecology. And I hope you are able to note those terms and now you know their definitions. Very good if you can. And if you can't, I charge you to be able to. All right? Okay. So today we'll be continuing with the topic, the basic ecological concept, and we'll be looking at the subtopic, components of ecosystem. Now the ecosystem has two components, the abiotic and the biotic components. The abiotic factors and the biotic factors. These are the two components of the ecosystem. Now when we talk about abiotic factors, they are non-living factors. A means absence of. A in the abiotic, that A means absence of. So when you have abiotic, it means absence of life. Biotic, you know, comes from bios, as in biology, which means life. Now, abiotic means without life. So without life factors, these are factors that don't have life. And they will include basic factors such as the organic factors, inorganic factors, climatic factors, edaphic factors. Organic factors will include your food materials. Inorganic factors will include essential gases such as oxygen. Climatic factors, factors of your climate, of your weather, such as rainfall, sunlight, temperature. Edaphic factors are factors relating to soil. So all these constitute the abiotic factors of the ecosystem. While the biotic factors, which is the second component of the ecosystem, okay, will include those living factors in the ecosystem, okay, and they will include the producers, the consumers, the decomposers. So producers, mostly your green plants, consumers, mostly your non-green plants and your animals, and then decomposers, such as your bacteria, your fungi, and other saprophytes, all constitute the biotic factors, okay, which is a major component of the ecosystem apart from the abiotic factors. Now, let's take a look at some abiotic or ecological factors that can affect life in an ecosystem. When we take a look at life in the water or aquatic habitat, some essential ecological or abiotic factors that can affect life in water will include salinity, turbidity, nature of bottom of the water, pH concentration. By salinity, we mean the concentration of dissolved salts in the water. By turbidity, we are talking about measurement of the clarity of the water body. How clear is the water body? How can you see through clearly from the top to the bottom? So it's a measurement of clarity of the water. Now, if the water is not clear, then it is turbid. If it is clear or transparent, then it is less turbid. Now, what about terrestrial habitats? Of course, we also have ecological factors as well as abiotic factors. Okay, now ecological factors are just the same as the abiotic factors, all right, that can affect the living factors or components in that environment. So taking a look at ecological factors affecting organisms that live on land, okay, those are terrestrial organisms living in terrestrial habitats, will have the climatic factors, topographical factors, edaphic factors. Now, what do you understand by climate? You must know that weather and climate, even though related, are not the same. When you talk about weather, that is the atmospheric condition of a place over a short period of time. But climate is the average weather condition of a place over a long period of time. So when we talk about climatic factors, we're looking at climate being the characteristic pattern of weather elements in an area over a period of time. These weather elements that constitute climatic factors will include rainfall, temperature, relative humidity, sunlight, wind, etc. Topographical factors. By topography, we mean the levelness of the soil or landscape, okay? As in the landscape. We're talking about how level is the land surface, okay? So in topography, we're talking about the nature of the land. Is it hilly? Is it lowland? And so on and so forth. So topography of the soil, for example, we are looking at the levelness. How level, okay, is the soil surface? Okay, so topographical factors will include physical features of an area. We're talking about the physical features. And then edaphic factors. When we talk about edaphic factors, these are factors relating to soil structure, soil texture, soil feature, soil pH, soil water, etc. in a given, okay, so we talk about edaphic, it's in relation to soil. So edaphic factors will be soil factors, okay, in terms of soil structure, soil texture, soil feature, soil pH, and even soil water, etc. And these are, okay, ecological factors that we have to consider when talking about terrestrial habitats. Okay, so these factors are pertinent or related to terrestrial habitats. So take note that factors or ecological factors relating to terrestrial habitats are different from those of aquatic habitats. For example, you can't be talking about salinity in a terrestrial habitat. I can't be talking about turbidity in a terrestrial habitat. All right, things like that. So, and you can't be talking about soil pH, for example, in an aquatic habitat. So take note of the difference of these factors as per the habitat involved. Now, what would be the importance of ecological factors to population? Okay, so there's a need to understand these ecological factors to population. By now, you know the definition of population. In our last class, we saw the difference between population and community. So, the importance of ecological factors to population. Okay, so will include that it determines survival. When we're talking about animals, it determines the type of animal found in a particular area, it determines their population, it determines the availability of food to animal population. And then of plants, it determines vegetation of a place, it determines the survival of plants in a given habitat, it determines the types of plants that can be found in a given ecosystem. So in fact, generally, there's a need to understand the ecological factors affecting organisms living in any kind of habitat, because this will go a long way to help us maintain the survival or enhance the survival of these organisms in their environment. We should know, for example, the conducive factors to these organisms and allow it. And we should also know the factors that are dangerous to these organisms and prevent these factors. Okay, so thereby all these will help sustain longevity of these organisms and their sustainability and perpetuation of their genes, okay, to the next generation, just the perpetuation or continuity of their species, thereby preventing extinction of these organisms. Okay, so here I brought to you some soil types, because when we're talking about ecological factors affecting terrestrial habitat, looking closely at the edaphic factors, or let's say edaphic factors of the terrestrial habitat, will be, one of them will be soil types. So we have three classes of soil, or three types of soil: the clay soil, sandy soil, and the loamy soil. Now, it's important we know what their water holding capacity, because this will help us know the right vegetation. Okay, this will help us plant the right crops on the right soil, thereby sustaining plant life. Okay, so taking a look at water holding capacity of the soils, say number one, clay soil, you see that the water holding capacity or the retention ability of this clay soil to water is high. That means it is the least porous when compared to the others. When you talk about loamy soil, it's just an average. The retention capacity of water of loamy soil is on the average. That means the porosity is also on the average. But the sandy soil, the water holding capacity or its ability to retain water is low. That means it is the most porous of the soils. So if you want to plant crops or arable crops, you know that the best soil will be the loamy soil. The best soils for planting is the loamy soil. Now, because the water holding capacity is just good enough, it's average, and its porosity as well is also average. Okay, so because if the water holding capacity is high, then it can be prone to flooding. And if it is too porous, okay, it may lose water. So loamy soil is just on the average. It is not too high nor too low. So you discover that such soil will be good for planting purposes. So that is an ecological factor that we need to note associated to plants for plant growth. And then let's take a look at measurement of ecological factors. Now remember we said that an ecosystem is an ecological system, okay, whereby we look at the interrelationships existing between the living and the non-living components of that environment, how they both affect each other. Okay, and we said that in ecology we have two components or two factors of the ecosystem, and these factors will be the abiotic and the biotic factors. Now, the biotic factors, we said, are the living components of the ecosystem, which could be the producers, consumers, and the composers. However, there are factors that affect these living organisms in their environment. The abiotic factors affect the biotic factors in that environment. And these abiotic factors have measurements. For example, there are organisms or biotic factors, such as living organisms, that cannot withstand too high sunshine, or it may desiccate and die away. So that sunlight intensity becomes an abiotic factor affecting that organism. So abiotic factors affect the biotic factors of that habitat. This is what ecology is all about. Studying the relationship, studying how these abiotic factors affect the biotic factors. How do we study them? By measurements. We know these factors. We should know their measurements. And they are measured using instruments. This will help humans allocate the right dose of these abiotic factors to these living organisms. And in cases where they don't have the power to give these or discharge these abiotic factors, they can help at least to give these living components a conducive environment so that they can withstand these abiotic factors. And this will help sustenance of life of the living organisms in that environment or habitat. Now let's take a look at number 1, abiotic factors such as number 1, rainfall. You should know the instrument for measuring rainfall. That will be the rain gauge. The instrument for measuring temperature will be the maximum and minimum thermometer. We also have another one, the clinical thermometer. Generally, you can just write thermometer if you don't want to be specific on the types. Thermometer is the instrument for measuring temperature. And then the instrument for measuring wind direction is the wind vane. The instrument for measuring wind speed is the anemometer. Take note of the difference. Wind direction and wind speed are not measured with the same instrument. And then the instrument for measuring pressure is the aneroid barometer, or simply the barometer. If you were asked, what is pressure? Do you still recall? Okay. Pressure is force acting per unit area. And it has an instrument for measuring it. That is the barometer. What about humidity? Hygrometer. Humidity is measured with an instrument called hygrometer. Notice not hydro, but hygrometer. What about sunlight intensity? Is measured using the light meter or the photometer. What about water depth? Meter rule and knotted string. Height, meter rule. Slope, slope gauge. Turbidity. Do you recall the meaning of turbidity? It is a measurement, or it is a measure. Thank you. It is the measure, okay, of clarity or transparency of a water body. How clear is the water? If it's cloudy, then it is turbid. The more cloudy it is, the more turbid it is. However, if it is very transparent or pristine, then it is less turbid. And the instrument for measuring turbidity is the Secchi disc. A functioning ecosystem. Every functioning ecosystem will have the autotrophs and the heterotrophs. And you know the meanings. You know the difference between the two. every functioning ecosystem has a transference of energy flowing along a food chain or food web. There is the movement of energy, circulation of energy in that ecosystem, coming from the producers that make food in that ecosystem, taking up some part of the energy will be transferred to the consumers. Say, starting with the primary consumers, to the secondary consumers, to the tertiary consumers, and even to the quaternary consumers, and then even the decomposers. We have pyramid of energy in every functioning ecosystem. We'll be looking at that later. So, functioning ecosystem. Functioning ecosystem. Every functioning ecosystem, every ecosystem must have autotrophs, which are the producers, the green plants. They make food using the process of photosynthesis. Some autotrophs are also chemosynthetic. So they practice chemosynthesis. Have some special types of bacteria that are chemosynthetic. They are also autotrophs. They make food for the ecosystem. They are the producers in that ecosystem. Okay? And of course, we have autotrophs in the waters too, not only in a terrestrial habitat. And then, of course, heterotrophs are the consumers. So every functioning ecosystem will have the producers or the food makers and the consumers that feed on the producer, or they feed from the producers and pass on this energy to the subsequent consumers. That way, energy is circulated and heat is produced in an ecosystem that is functioning. Thank you very much for listening. That's where we'll end this segment of our discussion. We'll stop here for today, and I will charge you to take down notes contained in the slides, so you have your own notes to read, and also chapters of your textbooks will be drafted to you. I think I will do that, and it will be posted on our WhatsApp page so that you know the scheme of work and the chapters to also refer to alongside this video and the slides made for you. These will constitute your materials, your notes, okay, for this as you prepare for exams in our online classes. Thank you for being there, and if you have any question, please just post on our WhatsApp page and I will entertain them and answer them. Thanks for being there. Till we see you again. Bye.